Good evening, everyone. We left off on page 136. Go fish. Nuh-uh, you have a black thing. Spade. It's called a spade, you idiot. Patrick wasn't sure how Aiden knew what cards he had, but he suspected his brother was cheating. Be nice, Patrick, Sarah said softly. The little boy was frustrated, and more was going through his head than a game of go fish with his brother. I'm not an idiot, Aiden said resentfully. Then start calling it a spade. I can call it what I want. I'm done, Patrick said, throwing his cards down and walking over to the couch. He slumped down and switched the channel to a cartoon. Sarah looked at Aiden and sat in Patrick's seat. She debated going over to the 8-year-old, but decided to give him some space for now. Aiden was starting to pick up on the fact that something wasn't right as well, but he was more concerned with Patrick's behavior. Let's continue the game, okay? She asked him. He nodded and held out his hand for her to give him her cards. He would shuffle the deck. He always shuffled the deck. Sarah caught on that there were certain things Aiden refused to let other people do. He had to do them himself, or he wouldn't play. Shuffling the deck was one of them. Dealing the cards was another. And he had a thing about counting the cards and making sure there were 52 in the deck before he shuffled. He only did that when they initially started playing, though. When he was done, he dealt the cards and left the stack in the middle. Jokers are out, he said with a practiced tone. One more go fish, and then poker? Sarah was surprised. She didn't realize the little boy knew poker. Okay, she said. It'll be more fun if Patrick played later on. Patrick either didn't hear over the cartoon, which he had turned up quite loud, or he didn't acknowledge on purpose. She suspected he couldn't hear her, and she turned to Aiden. Don't worry about Patrick. Why's he being mean? Aiden asked. He hasn't had a very good day, Sarah explained. I'm not having a good day either, the 6-year-old decided. None of us are today, Aiden, she said. You want to go first? I have to organize, Aiden informed her, and proceeded to organize his cards. Sarah did the same. Got any 9s? Go fish. Aiden picked up a card and organized it. Got any 6s? Here, Aiden said, handing her a red 6 of hearts. Do you know when Mummy's getting back? I don't know, Sarah said. Probably later on. She's working on a very important case right now. Aiden nodded. You forgot to organize your 6. Oh, I'm sorry, said Sarah with a smile, and she promptly organized it. Your turn. Got any queens? Here you go, Sarah said, giving him 2. Score! Aiden said triumphantly, copying Patrick's tone when he won something. Got any 3s? Go fish. Sarah picked up a card and organized it. Do you know where Daddy is? Aiden asked her. I don't, Sarah said simply. It's your turn. Is Daddy's trip why Mummy's sad? He asked. I'm not sure, she answered. He was pretty perceptive, but then it could be because Kerry and he were so close. Sarah had thought Kerry did a great job of hiding her worry in front of the kids. Aiden frowned and asked, Got any queens? Go fish, she told him. He picked up a card. He only needed one more queen, but this new card was a black 5 of diamonds. Got any 6s? I'm not done organizing, he said in an annoyed tone. He finished, and then said, Go fish. Sarah picked up a card, and it happened to be the 6 she needed. There's a set, she said with a smile, putting the 4 cards down. Got any queens? No, still don't, she said. He had better problem-solving skills than that, she thought. She had seen him reason that someone had something simply by what they had asked for in the past of the game. Why was he asking her multiple times when she hadn't gone fishing? You have to say go fish, he insisted. Go fish, she told him. He picked up a card, and it still wasn't a queen. Frustrated, he organized it, then put his cards down, upside down and in a small, neat stack. I want to watch TV, he said. All right, she told him, and put her cards upside down. He walked over and sat next to Patrick. Move, Patrick said. No, Aiden told his brother, staying put. Move! Patrick yelled at him and shoved him. Aiden, Patrick, Sarah corrected, trying not to get angry. Aiden, Patrick was there first. Why don't you sit over here? Aiden got up with a humph and walked over to the other chair. He threw himself down and looked at the TV. Sarah could tell he wasn't watching it, though. It was interesting, however sad, that these 2 boys had picked up so much emotion from the people around them that now they were irritable as well. They had every right to be, especially Patrick. He knew something was going on, and no one would tell him what. Sarah sat down at another seat and sighed audibly. turning her attention to the cartoon. Next scene. Nikki had met Kerry at the explosion site, and she immediately proceeded to see how Greg was doing. The medic was almost done after about a half hour and was now wrapping Greg's stitched and non-stitched wounds. When Nikki heard he was hurt in the explosion, she almost didn't listen for the rest of what Justin had to say. "You all right?" she asked him, her face betraying her intense concern. "I'm fine," he said. "Just have to get some antibiotics and a few band-aids, and I'm ready to go. Are you joining us at Lorenz's place?" "I need you to go back and process the wreckage, Greg," Kerry said. "Nikki and I will go to the residence." Greg frowned. "I'm really okay." "It's not about that," Kerry lied. "I've got Sarah watching the boys, Justin working with Anderson and calling the families of the helicopter occupants, looking into why the squad cars were 15 minutes late, and running Cassidy Webster's name through the search. I need someone to process the car. Understood?" Greg nodded, recognizing the tone Kerry was using. She wasn't to be argued with. "Yes, ma'am." "Thank you. I'm calling in for more backup to go to Lorenz's place, and as soon as I'm done, we're leaving." Kerry walked away, knowing Nikki would want some time to talk to Greg. She was only giving her a few seconds, though. Then they really did need to leave. "You are closest to the bomb?" Nikki asked him. Greg nodded. "It's fine, though. Kerry told me a jump in time." Nikki shook her head, looking at his bandaged hands. She could see the bandages extending to his arms, but that he had pulled down his sleeves. "Do you have enough dexterity to process a car?" "I think I'll be okay with gloves. Full functionality of fingers," he said, wiggling his unbandaged fingers. His palms were as far as the bandages went, after all. She was just concerned for him, and she understood that. "Are your ears still ringing?" she asked him. She had been in explosions before. She knew how annoying ringing ears could be. "It's dying down," he said. They were silent for a few seconds before Nikki said, "Well, I'm going to go with Kerry." "Be careful," he said with a smile. "You too," she answered as she walked away. "Nikki, hop in the passenger seat. Let's go," Kerry called, seeing that Nikki was already walking toward her. Nikki buckled up next to Kerry, and they hovered away from the crash site, Nikki all the while watching Greg below her. When she could no longer see him, she turned around and faced the windshield. "He's fine, Nikki," Kerry said finally. "Really." "I know," she said, but changed the subject. "It's getting dark." "Mm-hmm," Kerry responded. It was times like these when she wanted very badly to have Justin in the car. He never liked small talk. Nikki was quiet for a moment. "How far is it?" 15 minutes, Kerry said simply. "Check your service weapon?" "Already done," Nikki told her. Kerry nodded. Nikki wanted to talk, but she realized that Kerry wasn't going to budge. As soon as they got there, Kerry parked, checked her service weapon quickly, and then she cocked it and got out. Backup was already there, and informed Kerry that they had scanned for explosives, as were her orders, and had found none. "All right, I want all entrances covered, including the garage," she ordered loud enough for everyone to hear her. A squad car was already blocking the driveway. "We go in announced, but I don't want anything slipping through our fingers. Move." They moved. Nikki already had her service weapon drawn, and she followed Kerry up to the front door, where an officer had brought the noisemaker. Kerry tried the door first, and not surprisingly, it didn't open. She then knocked on the door. "Chicago PD!" she yelled. Again, not surprisingly, no one came. She nodded to the officer, and she and Nikki stood aside. The battering ram burst the door open, and they entered quickly. Nikki and Kerry went in together, and then officers dispersed throughout the house. One by one, they yelled, "Clear!" It didn't take them long to realize no one was there. "Let's start processing this," Kerry ordered through her radio. It wasn't a huge house. In fact, it only had 3 rooms on the downstairs, and 2 upstairs. Kerry and Nikki could handle it. They began working. Nikki found a shirt in the laundry hamper and with blood on it, and she bagged it as evidence. "I'll get this to trace and DNA," she said. "How much do you want to bet that it's transfer, and that it's got fibers on it identical to the ones we found?" Kerry smiled slightly at her and said, "I wouldn't bet against it." They confiscated Lorenz's computer as well, and Kerry saved it for Greg and Sarah to decode from head to toe. "This guy is not a neat freak," Nikki commented, picking up a piece of unfinished pizza and placing it in an evidence bag, just in case it had DNA other than Lorenz's on it. Kerry didn't respond. She was now looking at Lorenz's desk. She found printed out pictures that deeply disturbed her. One was of Thornberry Schools, and when she looked closer, she noticed that Connor's car was parked in front. The boys were running into the school. and he was putting the car back in drive. She looked at the next picture. It was of Aiden, his school picture from this year, and the next one was of Patrick. On the back was their information. Patrick Brady O'Malley, 8 years old, likes planes, penguins, and soccer. Kerry? Nikki asked, walking over to her. Did you find something? He was stalking them, Kerry said, as she looked at the next picture, which was of Connor. On the back it said not only Connor Sean O'Malley, 40 years old, writer, but also had his daily schedule written on it. It was printed out from the computer. This'll all be on the computer, she told Nikki, handing the pictures to her. Get those in an evidence bag. Greg and Sarah will find their digital imprints to prove he printed them out. Nikki nodded and put them in the bag. Are you all right? The question didn't seem to register at first, and then Kerry turned and looked at Nikki. Yeah, she said finally. I guess I should have expected it. She listened to herself as she spoke to her CSI and was alarmed to note that her tone had switched from its usual authority to fear and anger. She quickly amended that. We need to process the rest of the house, she said. I'll look through the rest of the desk. You keep working on that mess. She indicated the remnants of what looked like an afternoon of watching sports and drinking beer over by the couch in the television area of the family room. Nikki nodded, going back over to her domain. She was worried about Kerry. She didn't doubt her boss could handle this, but she wasn't sure anyone should be working on a case involving a loved one. And she was fairly sure Kerry would refuse to sleep tonight and work straight through till morning. She waited a few minutes before she said, If you and the boys need a place to stay tonight, I've got a guest room and a couch. Kerry smiled. That's very kind of you. Justin already offered, though. Nikki nodded in complete understanding. Oh, definitely. Justin's got more than one empty room. That'll be better for Aiden and Patrick, she said. Kerry smiled, nodded, and turned back to her work. They finished shortly, and then departed for the crime lab once more. Next scene. Connor's eyes slid open once more, and he was at first not sure where he was. He was in so much pain. What had happened? Was he in an accident? What happened to the accident avoidance system? Aiden, Patrick, he called, and then his vision cleared, and he saw the guard. Vague memories of a previous conversation with this man, and the understanding of being his prisoner, flooded back, and he groaned, realizing his mistake of mentioning the boys. They're with your wife, the guard said. He pulled out a radio from his pocket and said, He's awake. Connor brought his hand up to his eyes to rub them, but winced in pain. His pinky finger on his right hand was broken, and he held it still to minimize the prickling feeling. The pain from his finger was almost tolerable compared to the rest of his injuries. Did you think breaking my finger would wake me up? He asked weakly. The door unlocked and slid open. The guard addressed Connor. We had to be sure you weren't faking unconsciousness, he said gruffly, and then stepped aside to allow his boss to pass through. You should be grateful, the man said. We gave you a bandage for that gunshot wound, and we don't need your computer information any longer. We found a much more reliable source. Connor dared not look down at the bandage he had been told was there. His head hurt even without the movement. He was sure moving it would result in utter agony. He didn't respond to his captor's words, because he knew that they only bandaged a gunshot wound because he would have bled to death if they hadn't, and he could still die of an infection. I need to go to the hospital, said Connor quietly. He didn't mention the fact that he knew nothing about computer information that they had wanted him to give them. That's what I'm here to talk to you about, my friend, the man told him. We're going to make a video. You'll be addressing your wife, and you'll say exactly what we tell you, or we'll shoot you again. Understand? Fine, Connor responded. What? He winced as a bout of pain ripped through his chest. He had no idea what that was from. He remembered the gunshot wound, but remembered nothing about his chest being injured. He didn't remember his head hurting this much either. What does that have to do with the hospital? He asked when the pain had momentarily subsided. Your script. You will tell her that as soon as we see that she has stopped working on her case, we will take you to the hospital. She has a lot of cases. She'll know which one we're talking about. Now, you will also tell her that if she doesn't stop working, we'll kill you both, and the children. Connor glared at the man, but said nothing. If you don't cooperate, you're dead. He resisted the urge to say, I have a feeling I'm dead anyway. Connor's captor took out his gun and prepared to shoot his prisoner in the arm for good measure. He shoved the weapon violently into Connor's arm, and Connor hurriedly said, "I'll cooperate." "Good," the man said with a nod. He turned around and said to the guard, "Bring the camera. We'll read more tomorrow."